suppose I'm going to introduce myself as Michael Gerard
Yes,
Doherty.
nice.
The double barrel. I've been called most names, between the slang names from my friends to Mihal, where I work in a Gael school, Irish school, to MG, to she lived now to 102, but my granny at 95 reminded me that she was the one who christened me Geordie, from Michael Gerard. So, yeah, I answer to most things, but Michael Gerard, I suppose, would be what I'm most commonly known, hence where MGD Coaching comes from also. Um, I don't really know what title to give myself because I don't see myself as being any one thing. Before, I think I would have been quite prescriptive in saying I'm a primary school teacher. I'm a sports coach. At the minute, I just see myself as someone who's out there trying to make every day a bit better, trying to use the life experiences, the lessons that I've learned to give those around me, particularly my family and friends, and I suppose those I'm entrusted with now within the coaching world, both personal and performance. A chance to reach their potentials and feel a sense of purpose and know that people care about them. So,
Well, you mentioned being a school teacher.
Yeah.
And you were over 10 years you were in teaching?
Yeah,
was
pushing 15 years.
As a school. And obviously now you've founded MGD Coaching and Performance. Talk us through that journey and how it came about.
Yeah, well, I suppose teaching, it always seemed like the right fit for me. I'd have been coaching younger children from a young age. My father, he'd be the manager of a community centre. So again, would have been used to being around youth clubs, constantly in and around, I suppose, my peers at that age group, but then working on supporting children. Quite a few nieces and nephews. My father first qualified as a teacher and then went into, I suppose, the community sector. And it always just seemed like the right fit to go out and make a difference. I always felt, and it was passed down from my grandfather, that education was always the best way to create options for yourself and for others, especially within your own community. So I think without telling you, we want you to be a teacher, teaching was always put on a pedestal when it came to conversations around vocations. And what are you thinking of doing, Michael Jordan? What subjects do you choose? And God, them subjects would be very well tailored towards, the teaching profession there and that. And St Mary's, I hear St Mary's have great Gaelic football teams there, and you're an avid Gaelic footballer. So I think it was certainly being prepped in the background unknowingly, but right from the start of teaching, to me, it was the be all and end all. It was the perfect vocation, more so than a career, for where I felt I could make the most impact in my community and the best suited my skill set, to be honest with you, Jason. I'm a native Irish speaker, a Gaeilgeoir, so to work in an Irish medium school and do all my teaching through the medium of Irish, give it that extra, I suppose, sense of passion. We always says it was something you had that was special, that not everyone was bilingual. The school was informal yet respectful. So in Irish medium schools, you wouldn't be addressed as sir or miss. Wouldn't be Mr. Doherty. I'd be Miho. And there was very much a feeling of we're trying to work together to get you the best education possible. School should feel like a safe place. It should feel like a haven where you can be you. You don't need to conform to what your peers are doing, what the pressure in society are telling you. When you're here, you be you.
Yeah.
And we'll support you.
Yeah, I think a sense of, I didn't have a great relationship with school myself. I went on to really find education in my mid-20s and absolute passionate educator now. But I always said, maybe what you're saying there, that hierarchical approach to it, that it was tiered. And yeah, I was always taught to respect my elders and things like that. But you just, I don't know, it was layered, tiered. And I can see what you're saying with that. Yeah, if you could get us on a level playing field, but just people.
Absolutely.
And let's go along this journey together. Yeah, definitely. So what sparked the MGD? How did you come from what you've been saying, absolute love for a profession or a vocation more than a profession,
Yes,
by the
yeah.
sound of it. How did you stay then and end up where you are today and come away from teaching? I suppose a different type of teaching, isn't it?
Yes,
But yeah.
yes. There's certainly similarities there, and I think coaching allows me to do what I love most about teaching, and in effect, I actually felt like I was coaching a lot of the time through my teaching.
Yeah.
Through the questioning, through creating an environment for the children, I suppose, in front of you at that time to overcome obstacles. For some children, that may have been spelling. For other children, that may have been staying fit at break time. For other children, it may have been keeping focus from day to day. But for me, each of those challenges carried the same level of merit and importance. And to me, and not just our own educational system, but indeed many across the world, your social status, your sense of purpose, your sense of belonging and worth in the world was very much tunneled towards how you achieved academically and how you performed academically. I mean, of young children myself, and I can remember my own son in primary two already being able to label reading groups in his class and being able to label himself as, I'm in the second worst reading group. And, we're talking here children at 6 years of age, 5 and 6 years of age, using language like that. And for me, I appreciate it. And again, I'm coming from a background where my grandfather and my father were massive in the education, getting the best grades you could, give yourself the best options in life. And really, they talked about education as your gateway to opportunities. For me, I suppose, being on the ground, I had a deeper sort of connection with that, where to me, what's more important? A child there who's got 10 out of 10 on their spelling test, or a child who's shown incredible levels of empathy towards their classmates in times of need. Does that child who's shown that incredible empathy realize that that's just as important, if not more important, than the child who's getting 10 out of 10? That there's certain children there who are acing through spelling tests. Again, that maybe they're numeracy in that, but in terms of social skills, they're really getting it tight. And for me, it was hard when the board, I suppose, are very keen on quantitative data. It was very much numbers going through them. My school had to say, I was blessed. I couldn't have worked in a more supportive school, a school who got it, a school who wasn't 100% academically driven. We wanted to give our kids the best in all areas, but at the same time, they had to pass results on to the board at the end of the day, or PIM or PI, and you were judged on that.
I can remember I was teaching for a while in SEN environment and working with young people 16 to 24. And one of the things I used to say was, it was a phrase, Patch Adams, at the end of the film, where he talks about treating people. And I sort of rephrased it and says, if you teach a curriculum, sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. But if you teach the person, you win every time, no matter the outcome.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think we've got away from that, is that we teach tests, we teach number crunching and all that, and we just forget the person sometimes. And that's tough. Obviously, a lot of lessons from teaching. I know it's something that I've really enjoyed, and I find some of the roles that I've taken on, one of the great advantages I've had, like I talk about, of an understanding maybe more than some around behavioural concepts, because the behavioural analysis training I had. But I think the thing that really stands out to me was understanding how people learn, being able to go into it, whether you're in a sporting environment or a corporate environment, being able to create learning outcome driven tasks that I could actually recognize whether they were learning or not, where others, it was just happening and they couldn't actually put a finger on why they did or why they didn't, because there was never the initial thought of, I'm setting this quotient up to achieve this, and that now gives me a method of assessment. Like thinking of that from a teaching, is there anything for you in particular that you've brought out of teaching and really stuck in your profession?
I think helping others see the light within themselves at times in their own environment. They're being put on by what other people feel is important, as opposed to what you said there, what they feel is important about themselves or what really matters to them, not what matters to a, a judge, a scorer, an assessor, what matters to them. And for a lot of people, it's being seen, being heard that he knows me do that. He saw me doing that. And for me, the golden spot is when they don't even realize the talents they have or the ability they have, the want they have, the resilience they have, and you help them see that light within themselves. So whereby a child before was possibly, I hate to keep harping on about spelling tests, but it's just it's the easiest example I can give, where you have a child who's possibly getting 2 and 3 every week, but you know how hard they're working on that. You know that every week they're practicing. And when you're then praising effort and telling them, you put so much work in that to get your 4 this week, that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And really praising effort where they're appreciating. God, geez, I did. This week I really did. I really focused this week, and I got one more than last week, where before then it was just 3, and they're comparing their 3 to someone else's 10 and someone else's 9. Compare your 3 to your 3.
Yeah.
Compare to where you're at and what you've did, and constantly looking at effort, asking them, where do you want to get to? What's important to you? What would really have you buzzing? What would have you feeling really proud of yourself? What's your best qualities? Helping children, I suppose anyone at any age, any point of the day when you can help someone appreciate what they do well and connect with what they do well, just creates that instant sense of being and belonging and worth.
I used to talk this thing about metrics in sport. We had been doing a lot of data analysis, and I used to get into some very interesting conversations because of my mindset and approach to it. Because I used to say, but what's your 100%? And they go, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, look, nobody really is getting 100% pass completion rate. So what's their 100%? So is 80, if 80% pass completion rate is a good standard, then let's set that to be our 100%. So if they get to there, so do you know what? We can achieve more than 100%. So I could go to somebody, you're 110% today, because we always talk about giving a bit more than 100%.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, you achieve more than your limit today. You got over the 100%. And I always just say about people having their individual 100%. What are they? So when they get over them, they want to stay over them.
Correct.
And then we just adjust the 100% for them. And it's just things like that. And I'm going, it's simple motivational things.
It's reframing.
And I just find it. We're always anchored on looking at things negatively anyway.
Absolutely.
So how do we flip that? It's always positive.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about language. It's like walking through an airport. You can't carry 100 mils through this airport. Why not tell them that you can carry 100 mils?
Yeah.
It's a different conversation.
Absolutely. Mindset. I mean, just as you're speaking, it's bringing one pupil to mind. And it was a pupil I had in primary 4. And if a pupil ever does listen, he knows straight away who he is. He didn't show up for school the first 2 weeks. And with no reason why. We couldn't understand why. And over time it transpired that I was the only male teacher in the school. And that because of his experience with males up until that point, he did not want to go into an environment where a male was, in his head, telling him what to do and how a male was going to teach him. So I could see straight away that he was coming in with an opinion of me and how I was going to behave to him. So that made it all the more important that no matter what conversation I had to him, that it was undoing a narrative that he built up. It was primary 4, so you're talking a 7, 8-year-old at that point. That it was going to be pretty important from day dot how I made this young lad feel. And one thing that stood out straight away was that he was quite athletic. Socially, you could see he was quite reserved from that, but you could see someone there who was fast, was agile. And I looked at my own background in Gaelic games that I was taking in the school and felt that this is a good opportunity for his athletic skills to come in. Now, the second he heard about Gaelic games, he was like, I can't do that. I don't know how to handle it. He was focusing on, just you say, focus on the negatives. Say so. He thinks the fastest in the class. Dude, you're up there. Think you'll take him to sports day? So if I threw a ball up your speed, you'd get there ahead of everyone else. Or for maybe two people, and it'll be close. Just right, look here. I'll have a few. Come in. I'm taking a session after school. I'll have a few races. I throw the ball and see who gets out first. That same lad, by the end of the year, near enough forced my hand to take the team in my club. I wasn't coaching because he would only go to the team where I would be the coach. I took that lad then right through until adulthood. He kept on some teams for me. He actually would have referred to me. His mother would have says, "You were his father figure" back then. And it all started with reframing, helping him see the light within himself instead of looking at, I can't do this, I can't do that. This is what I've heard about meals. This is my narrative up until now. Rewriting his story, rewriting those patterns. I suppose that allowed him the space then to offer that bit more trust to others and over time thrive. And to me, it's moments like that. And that's the only way I can phrase it, helping others see the light within themselves when they can't see it at times. That's the biggest and most impactful thing we can do as human beings. And teaching allowed me to do that in my new role, I suppose. It's maybe just that wee bit more frequent and widespread.
Yeah, you describe yourself as a sort of life and performance coach.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, for someone new to that sort of title or role, what does it actually include? What is it you do?
To me, when I first heard of life coaching, I actually thought it was a really waffly tale. Just to be blunt about it, I don't know why, but I always envisaged someone with an American accent who was 6'5" and was barking motivational quotes at someone. And that was it. And it was only the more I read into it, a few trusting people who I spoke to, whose word would carry weight, got me to explore. And the more I explored, the more I realised it's completely different. I've been coaching in a sporting role from I've been 14 years of age. My father always brought us up to have this mindset of others have been kind enough to give up their time for you. As soon as you're of age or in a position to do so, we give back and we support others. And that journey for me in a sport context started at 14. Sport and coaching and life coaching are actually very similar. I don't lift the football for the child, get their foot, and position their arms in the right way and kick the ball for them. Just like life coaching. I don't live out the person's life for them. I don't tell them what to do with their life. I create an environment where they will set the goals, just like the players on my team. I'll be asking them, where do you feel you can improve? What areas of your game do you feel you can improve today? I don't physically go out and kick the ball for them. I create games. I use coaching cues. I use questioning to get them to explore. Well, how am I kicking? What part of my foot am I using? I want to swing it this way. Just like life coaching. We'll set the goal together. Then we'll look at the reality of the situation. And again, just like the child there, we'll look at the reality. Well, why is it you're not happy with your kick? You know what you want to do, so go and do it. And then we'll look at the options to find that way forward. Well, what are you going to do? And for me, I suppose, I'm so passionate about life coaching because I know in a time of my greatest challenge in my own personal life that it was something I knew nothing about. It was a service that I never had heard tell of, didn't think it was ever an option. And looking back on, talking nearly 9 years ago, I suppose, and when I was in a difficult enough period of my life, that wouldn't have spiraled, in my opinion, to the levels that it did if I'd have had access to the current, I don't even like calling it service that I offer, the current skill set or the current form of thinking that I may have been privy to. So to me, if I ever feel that there's something out there that could have supported me or those close to me or those I care about or love, I'll do all I can to ensure that opportunity is there for others, especially my own community.
There's a few things there that you said, mainly environment for me, and it's something I'm so passionate and advocate for is, unless you create the environment for somebody to achieve the target behaviors that you're expecting of them, you're never going to get optimum performance from them. And that's everything. That doesn't matter whether we're talking about sport, whether we're talking about making a cup of coffee in a coffee shop. If the environment doesn't exist, if the training along with the facilities and the resources and the motivation for them to want to do it aren't all put in the jigsaw puzzle, you're not getting what you want as an outcome. And we get, I think, and I always talk about this, a lot of people in leadership roles, the easiest thing to do is blame the person. They come in, they perform badly, didn't perform great today. That was rubbish. That's not great. Those emails weren't sent out. But they've never sat and reflected and says, have I provided them the best software, the best tools, the best pen, the best piece of paper for them to perform at the standard that's stuck in my head?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, no,
that's on you. You know what I mean?
You're 100%. Yeah. And I suppose it's breaking a role that I've taken on to mind. About 2 months ago, I was delivering a sports coaching workshop. I deliver a lot of Gaelic games coaching workshops. And again, it's totally what you're talking about. How we can create an environment where players can thrive, where we can maximize learning opportunities, but create an environment where they want to be there. That retention is the key, keeping players involved, active and learning for as long as possible. I'm delivering a workshop for TDH coaches and older teams. And it just so happened that the team that I was delivering the workshop for, the club, were on the lookout for a lead coach for their team. And I got a phone call on the way home, driving down the road. I was basically asked, look, our team's been relegated from the league. Morale's pretty low. Would there be any way you would have give any consideration to coming in and leading up our coaching, our sports coaching here? And I suppose a lot of people put themselves first in these situations. They're like, oh, my name, going to say to a relegated team, this is a sinking ship and that. But for me, the more I listened to the manager at the time and, players on the ground, they felt that there was more in them. Just the morale was low, that when the game was in a melting pot, they were losing by a point or two. They were never really far away, and just sounded like a really exciting project and a good fit. I knew the values in the club, be pretty familiar with them and some of their players. So I bit the bullet and went in. And for me, the big thing was creating what we talk about, reframing things to allow them to see what they do best. So one of the first things I did was each player got a football. And we wrote on their footballs with a bit of a questionnaire and asked them, what's the 3 best things they bring to their club? Why are the lads around them lucky to have them when they're on the pitch? And we wrote these 3 things, myself and the kit man there. We wrote, well, he wrote them. I collated it. I think actually he got his missus to already said she'd better handwriting. But we wrote each of these 3 characteristics. So for some people that may have been brave, energetic, good communicator. And every player there, when they walked in, they had their football. And we asked, you bring these values to your side. We then took that to another level, I suppose, in recent weeks. Last week before a game, we were coming up against historically one of the best teams in the senior championship and senior league. A team who's all Ireland credentials, national credentials. And the term for this week was being fearless. And it wasn't enough for them to connect with some of their fears. So what we did was we looked at what they would say to the children in their club, to the young people in their club, if they were coming up against a task that felt beyond their means. I mean, as I say, we're talking about a club who had got relegated coming up against the Kingpins. We're talking about, in Premier League terms, we're talking Liverpool's coming in playing a team who got relegated last year. And no one's obviously giving you a chance. It's easy enough to listen to them noise. So we had to not even blank out that noise. We had to reframe this and channel their focus elsewhere, because they'd grown up hearing about this team, watching this team, someone fearing playing this team, hadn't beaten this team before. But when you flip that to how do you want your children, how do you want your under 12 team, your 16 teams to feel when they're watching you compete against this team? And our term is fearless. How can you help them feel fearless? How can you help them feel fearless no matter what challenge they're faced with, not just on this field, in any capacity, at any area of their life? And what we did to bring that focus back in was with a few of the players' children make wee loom bands and that the loom bands on their band. And at 1.10 minutes in, I think we were 8-1 down. And as the call fierce was on, the players would look at the band that would remind them, even at 8-1 down, I can still perform the best of my ability. It's not to say I'm 100% going to win this match, but I'll be fearless. There's nothing to lose. We were drawing the game, getting into injury time. The opposition got a point with the last kick of the game to win the game. But in terms of effort, in terms of the buzz in the crowd, there was no one in their community watching that game who could have been proud of their efforts. And there is no way that any one of them thought that the lads were showing any sort of fear or any sort of had any inferiority complex there towards the other team. And for me, creating those moments where people push boundaries, through reframing, through, I suppose, channeling their thought process in another, taking it away from their own narrative they've built up over time, it can be really, really powerful. And being involved in, I suppose, settings like that, there's where I come into my own and feel alive. So it was amazing.
I think it's interesting because I've taken up a sport in the last year and a half, and the guys have a laugh because I always say, so I've talking about lawn bowls.
Yeah.
I have extreme sport. But some of the guys, experienced guys and older guys, laugh because when I talk to them, I say, I've never thrown a bad ball in all my life. And they go, what? And I say, it's just feedback. And I said, well, see that ball over there that needs to be over there? That's just feedback. That's not a bad ball. It's just feedback. It's telling me, don't use that line again.
Yeah.
I say, and I have that attitude, and they laugh at me, but it works for me because I say, if you treat it as a bad ball, you start fighting the negativity.
Absolutely.
And then you sort of just keep following down that path. Whereas if you just go, happened, hold on to it for a tiny second. How did that feel? Right, I don't want to feel like that again.
Absolutely.
And try and do something about it. Just make a change, as I say. Just make a subtle change until you get the way you want to be. And it's very interesting that I think, again, it's that feedback and what are we encouraging our players to feel like?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you say, if it's having those wee visual cues, visual reminders to say, look, fearless, or nobody's expecting you to win you.
Yeah.
So just go out and play. Just go out and enjoy it. Go out and do what you feel is best. And that's what I say. It's just, it's just looking at it as everything. There is nobody goes on a pitch or into work, I don't believe, from a humanity point of view, to do a bad job.
I agree.
It's you then have to look at how do we make the best of that situation, or how do we put in that environment for them to do the best that they can. And you know what? Sometimes you're just going to come up against people that are better than you at it, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
I mean, and when you get to that stage, if you can walk off any environment, out of a business, out of a football field, no matter what, and say, I've done the best we could do, but that company would just edged us today, or just edged us this year. That's fine. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Thinking about everything you're talking about there, obviously coaching and mentoring others, you find that people working in that more well-being space that you're talking about, you end up holding a lot of space for other people. How do you look after yourself? How do you know what I mean? How do you offload? Yeah, because I know people tend to load multiple problems from multiple sources. What does that look like for you as an individual? How do you, because I know it's hard to say, it's a conversation. You just have the conversation and forget about it. Nobody forgets about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose through learning, Jason, in the past, and this was in an unprofessional plus professional, I suppose, in terms of teaching role, I took on everyone else's stuff. and I made everyone else's business, not even their business, my business, but I made their challenges my challenges. And if they weren't overcoming their challenges, then somehow that was on me. That if I wasn't doing everything in my power to, and back then, I've no problem using the term now as a term. If I'd ever said about myself, and I'd cringe, to fix things. There was a point in time in my life where I suppose a big sense of my identity was I need to fix things. You know, but like a plumber needs to fix the water systems, fix the pipes. An electrician needs to fix the light switches, the electrics. To me, my role in life was to fix things. Be that an underage team that wasn't winning, but then things get deeper. Be that family members who's ill, fixing illness. A relationship that's breaking down between family members, between friends. Every scenario I was in, I was trying to fix. I came into the teaching world, obviously with the very best intentions, but I come out thinking every child is going to learn everything I teach. Every lesson I do, every child will learn. Every single one of them will know everything. Just going home, making lessons for 26 different children and make sure every child was, and then feeling so responsible that maybe child wasn't picking something up, that maybe this tense relationship hadn't mended. And the closer to home, I suppose, that, these challenges were present, the harder it became to hold. So that in essence brought me to a point of breakdown, where I had taken too much on, where my mind was constantly feeling inferior because I was taking blame on myself because situations weren't being fixed. So to me, to be honest with you, the coaching world allows me to do what I was doing then, but in a healthy scenario, because it is non-directive. I don't tell any client, any team, any group what to do. I hold a space. I share listening to you. I'll share ideas and experiences that have worked for others in the past. But ultimately, any session I finish, it's the person in front of me or the people in front of me who'll set their own goals. I help them find a way of ensuring that there's actionable steps to work towards them, as opposed to saying, there's my goal, and they leave. So that they leave with some sense of hope. When I suppose was going through counselling, during that rough, period of time it was helpful to get things off your chest and to start making sense of things, but there was no action after from my point of view. And by the way, this isn't to be critical of counselling. I just felt that a bit of both would have been very beneficial for me. I needed to explore why I was behaving the way I was, why I suppose I'd hit the levels that I'd hit in terms of, I was depressed at that time, why I'd gotten so low when I had everything on a plate in terms of my life, my family, the career, the house. Nothing made sense. The more I dug deeper, it made sense why I was where I was, but there was no action plan. There was nothing to do to build back up to, okay, how do I reach? Now I would have this information. What do we do with it? How do we move on? Whereas in coaching, it's completely different. Everyone who's alongside me, they'll feel that one from the come in. It's actually just like my classroom. No matter what people come into me, they were offered a handshake, they were offered a knuckles, a fist pump, or a hug when they enter the classroom or left. My clients, and again in workshops, even in my coaching workshops, I'll go around 60 coaches and shake everyone's hand. They'll be offered that space. For some people, just a cup of tea, to feel welcome, to feel felt. That sense of, you're here. How can I support you? Why do you want to give coaching a go?
It's interesting because I know, like, we fall down these siloed approaches to things, I think, sometimes, and I always say about there's something usually in the intersection is it's like asking for opinions, and usually it's somewhere in between the two opinions that you get, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like that services. What you actually need is somewhere in between the two services, because it's very interesting. I think we're all we talk about people being jack of all trades, sometimes
Yeah.
master of none.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the most misused quote in the world because that's not the actual quote. Do you know that?
No.
So it's
I don't know,
actually,
was it?
now, I don't know whether I'm going to get this right verbatim, but it's like jack of all trades, master of none, but often better than one.
Okay. Yeah.
But we took it. Somebody just took it and says, jack of all trades, master of
Ah,
none. But the actual quote was
draw a line.
about having multiple disciplines was better than one,
Yeah.
not that it was a
Yeah.
master.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we took the wee bit that
Yeah.
somebody liked.
That worked for them.
Yeah. And it became a negative connotation about stuff where the actual quote was based on a positive connotation. So you should look it up. It's actually,
Yeah,
I
no,
can't, the exact
absolutely.
wording of it is definitely I'm not far away. I know with that
Amazing.
quote. So it's very interesting about when you talk about
Yeah.
if you have multiple skill sets, you usually find the provision, no matter what you're doing, is somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely.
I know speaking and your speaking career.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you joined us last year about the Pecha Kucha competition for TEDx and presented an amazing talk. And I was having this conversation the other day with a few people about Queens and Pecha Kucha up at Black Mountain Shade Space in combination, because I says we found 2 speakers for TEDx, but we actually found 30 amazing speakers over the 2 competitions because it was tight. It was so, and what I was talking about was, as a curator of TEDx, all I ask of speakers is you make my job hard, because then I feel that, and you'll know this from
Yeah.
performance sport, you want your boys to go out there and make selection tough.
Of course.
You want to be able to have hard conversations with good players to say, you don't make the team today because, but as long as you can justify those reasons, yeah, they're going to be upset. They're going to find that tough. But we're trying to build resilience as well in everything that we're doing. And I got to that stage and thought, like, reflecting on the people that didn't get to the main TEDx stage, and I'd still say we had a TEDx sitting as backup somewhere in terms of the quality. And I can always remember your talk and was thinking, you know what I mean, really vulnerable, authentic story that you'd given on the day.
Mm.
Have you done anything since? Have you, like, obviously, was
I
that, I think that was the first, did you say to me that was one of the first times you spoke like that in public, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've spoken in front of educational groups. But at that level, that was my first time. I suppose if you really want to, point at public speaking, that was it. And yeah, I suppose it was just that rawness, that honesty, and to go back to, I suppose, what I said previously. I spoke about something I wish I'd have heard someone else speak about.
Yeah.
Many years ago. And I suppose that was the remit for it. Since then, for the first time, I did my own, if you want to call it, a one-man show, one-man talk. I held my own personal evening called the 3 C's. And it was based on, for me, the 3 things that matter most on a daily basis to everyone: communication, connections, and care. How you communicate, not just verbally, but how you communicate with those around you, can make or change someone's day. You literally can light up someone's day. And likewise, you can flip someone's day like that also. The connections you have, meaningful connections, to me is one of the greatest gifts we have as human beings.
Yeah.
People to share what's worth having good news if you've no one to share with. Again, the challenging news if you've no one to support you with the connections and make they're worth their weight in gold. And that last one, Karen, in a world where mental health issues are on the rise, where levels of suicide, I suppose, are some of the highest levels in Europe, if not in the world, in West and North Belfast. You have people who get to a point where they feel bottom of the barrel and they don't feel cared for. What purpose do you have for hanging around? What purpose do you have for hanging around? So for me, I don't care who you are, what your story is. Everyone in this world needs to feel cared for.
Yeah, and I think the whole TEDx thing for me is very much around creating that environment for having different voices heard,
Yeah.
creating a space for connection. And like, I get a buzz. I like I like public speaking myself. I like getting up on those stages and having conversations and sharing stories that could just change somebody's thinking and change their approach to something. And so I enjoy that. But the whole TEDx thing for me is very much around like elevating stories, because like some of this, I was actually having this conversation with Martin earlier. So we were talking, I've been talking about next year and what my vision is and what I'm trying to do. And we were speaking around maybe trying to get some, or like, what would it be great to get a superstar, a megastar on the stage maybe. And we used a particular, and I don't want to mention the name, but we used a particular person who's very much in the limelight, very big in the business world, and was mentioned, something like that would be amazing. But I then went and actually found somebody who is a co-founder of what they've created and nobody knows they exist. He said, no, that's an interesting person.
Yeah.
Nobody knows they exist. Nobody knows their story. And I want to know, because they've elevated this person to be a global superstar and nobody knows who they are. I want to know what they have to say. So I'm hunting that person.
I think it's amazing.
You know what I mean? Rather than
unreal.
This, because I'm just going, they're the stories I want to hear. The ones that aren't in the limelight. Because if I put one of these people on a TEDx stage, we're just going to learn what we already know from a different narrative, from a very polished approach. Yeah. But they've already said it. They've already said it on social media. They've already said it on a TV show and stuff like that. I want to know how did that about? Yeah. And I just think, how did they get to where they are? So they're the type of people, and then throw in locals on the coattails of those stories as well. So we're going to take the same approach next year, and with a few other things, with panel discussions and stuff like that, and getting really good local people involved in these panel discussions and getting amazing stories told. So yeah, look, I just incredible. You today, like, I thought your story was outstanding, the message was outstanding, and that was down to, like, if you'd have seen the points margins on that.
I don't do quantitative data. Do you not hear me, Jason?
Well, I tell you, and the good thing about it was, I can remember saying the best thing about that night was that I'd outsourced the judging. Because
that's right.
I'll tell you now, that was tough. Like, I could see they were fighting with their own emotions, because they're going like, how do we tell? And that's what I think I said on the night. We have to remember there's 9 other people in this room that didn't get selected because the quality was through the roof. And I love that. You know what I mean? I just love that people turned up and brought that quality to an event I created. So it has really given me the buzz to keep doing it.
Good.
Absolutely given me the buzz to keep doing it. Something, and then obviously, like, you're talking about people struggling. So, like, I have a wee note down here, and I just thought this would be a very interesting question to ask you: is if someone was listening and struggling, like, to this podcast, what's a question you'd want them to ask themselves? Because I think a lot of this is it has to start with you, doesn't it? You have to say, what do I need? I need counselling. What do I need? I need coaching. What's the question you'd ask?
I'd ask them the most difficult question I've ever been asked in my life. And I say difficult because it was the question that I found hardest to answer. I'm a decent talker. I can communicate to most people at varying levels. But I was asked by, for me, the greatest life coach in Ireland, if not globally, a man called Stephen Hunter. He was my mentor and trainer with the Irish Life Coach Institute. And he asked, and he knew from my body that he asked the group, yet he pinpointed me on my body language straight away. He's brilliant at picking things up. And he asked, what's your relationship like with yourself?
Interesting.
And he knew from just my body language that I was gone in the head. And he pinpointed me straight away. And again, being as observant as he is, made me aware of what he was seeing in body language and asked me to describe that. And the only way I could reply was, I didn't know we had a relationship with ourselves. I assumed we were putting a serve for others, to be a son for your parents. As I've grown older, to be a father to my kids, a husband for my wife, a teacher for the pupils, supposed to, now, a sporting coach, a life coach. To me, they're the relationships in my life, and really got me thinking. The deeper I thought, the more I looked at layering, and almost like an onion, peeling layers. Okay, if we stop looking at Michael Gerard, the sports coach, we stop looking at Michael Gerard, the son, we stop looking at all these different roads, what's left? Bit like he always talked about the Puska stalls. When we open the doors and open the doors.
The Russian,
yeah. Getting to that, what's that door? And it was only when I could connect with what that doll was and what that doll created and who that doll really was. And to me, ultimately, what that came down to at the very core of myself was someone who cares. Someone who absolutely cares. And my doll that was missing in that toll chain was someone who cares about themselves. Because for me, the only time I felt good about myself was when I suppose in the earlier days felt I was fixing someone or a situation. Whereas I suppose I've grown into a point where the relationship itself is based on one where I know I care. That's enough. I'm going to do my best no matter what, because it's in me to care, to see that light in others, to help others see the light in them. But I can't put the spotlight on them. I can't turn a light bulb on inside them. That's only they can do that. Where before, I suppose I put that unjust pressure on myself, where that took me a long time, Jason. I mean, that question was asked, I'd say it took 2 years after that question was asked to really get down to what it meant. It was one of those questions, I think the question I've thought and considered the most, other than any other question in life. And that would be the one, because when you dig down through those dolls and strip it back to who you are, then you've got that canvas to work from and be so much kinder, I suppose, to yourself and more understanding of why you've reacted, why you've behaved in certain ways. And you can look at those maladaptive behaviours and start looking at what's best for you. We've got to take yourself into consideration and what's going to help you care, what's going to help me care ultimately. Well, self-care is at the heart of it.
I'd had a conversation with Matt and Irvine earlier, and we were talking about communication, and I'd said when I was doing my master's, I read a book by B.F. Skinner, and it was called Verbal Behaviour.
Mm-hmm.
Martin says the irony, because I just said it's a book about communication and verbal behaviour, and it was the hardest read you will ever read. But it was more about the technical concept of what he was trying to explain. And really, in a nutshell, verbal behaviour is very much around the concept that it's verbal behaviour is not the spoken word. It's just one, and what he was, so he breaks it down technically into the concept of I'm talking to you at this right time and moment.
Yeah.
So like and he called that a mand. So anything where there's a suggestion was a man, demand, demanding something. But my hand gesture, my language is speaking to you at this very course. So he looked at it and broke it down. So you had things like when people replicate what you're doing, he called it an echoic behaviour. But it was all verbal, it was all talking and interverbals and things like that. So he broken language down into all these different elements.
Yeah.
What he was saying, it's all verbal behaviour. It's all talking to us.
Yeah.
It just isn't spoken in the context of we think of verbal. And after reading that book, it was things like that I started to notice an awful lot as well, like what you're talking about. being able to look at people's body language, and because one of the things I'd said is about like in coaching worlds, and I've said this a couple of times before on the podcast as well, that your body language has to match what you're saying.
Of course.
It's no good giving encouragement if your body language is saying totally the
Gotta
opposite
feel it.
thing.
Gotta feel it from you.
And because people are reading what you're saying, they're not listening to what you're saying. It's just part of that verbal behavior. So
That's
if
right.
there's two contrasting messages, we have a tendency to anchor onto the negative and not the positive. So if the negative is my shoulders are down and
Yeah.
I'm telling you one thing, while my mouth is saying something else, you're going to anchor to that body language.
It's your role in
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so I think it's very important when you talk about noticing
Of course.
and developing those skills to notice more. But that question, I think, is a lot of people will be sitting
Yeah.
trying to answer that.
Yeah, good luck to them. Took
After
me 2 years.
after the podcast, but very, very deep. So I think we'll move to our final question then of the podcast, and we call this the Emily Bond question because,
Okay.
just to let you know, we had a rocket scientist by the name of Emily Bond on our very first episode of this series, and we were trying to think of a fun question we could ask at the end. In our first series, we've done this thing called the ChatGPT question, which literally involved me popping your information into ChatGPT and saying, what is the most interesting question you'd ask this person? And we would answer or ask you that live on the podcast. So this time we wanted to come away from that. And I was thinking, right, I have a rocket scientist. What could I ask a rocket scientist that would be a bit of fun? So we came up with a question, and it was a bit like, there used to be a TV series, I don't know whether, Room 101, where you used to put something in the Room 101 and try and get rid of it.
Okay.
So our question was to Emily, if you could fire anything up into space at this time and moment, anything at all, what would it be and why?
Fire anything up
Anything
space.
up into space. It can be,
and that's it gone or stays up there?
Yeah, it's
What?
gone. It's gone.
It's gone forever?
Anything up in space. Well, I don't know if it's gone forever because the Hubble telescope will be up there looking for it.
Fire anything up to space. What would it be?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you come across a cactus floating in space, Emily put it there.
That's... If you'd have given me a billion questions could ask that wouldn't have been one of them.
So it's your Room 101.
Nuclear bombs. Nuclear bombs. Because the thought of those being in the hands of our own people and the destruction they could cause isn't worth thinking about. And I think, and not to get political, but thinking of how certain countries act to stop or prevent other countries maybe having them, and they have them, is pretty contradictory. So if no one had them, would the level of overall threat, and to me, just in general life, when people feel threatened, they try and reduce how threatening the people in front of them may be. And if they feel that they're less of a threat, they feel safer. So if we were to all of the nuclear bombs, I'd like to see what the world looked like.
It's interesting because you said about being in the hands of the wrong people. I think of them also being in the hands of the right people. They're still a very scary prospect, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is it a defense mechanism? It's because it's an obliteration of life as we know it. So
this is it. And to me, what is their purpose? You know, when I think about what their purpose is, there's no good in that. So to me,
there's no coming back.
The most meaningful thing has to be in life. Life is everything. Living life to the fullest. You take any form of life away. If I had the power to take, I suppose, chemicals or something that could create that end game, I'd be delighted to do so. So yeah, tell me how this rocket is, and let's
Yeah,
get it started.
well, we would agree with you on that one. So
Yes.
this has been quite
Phew,
easy.
I'm sweating
everybody,
a bit there.
we now have, I think, a cactus. We have the concept of imposter syndrome up there, which was a very interesting one. But I loved the way that was framed, because when we were talking about imposter syndrome, and this has come up a few times over the last week for me around imposter syndrome, and the framing was that it's more a conscience imposter syndrome, because imposters don't get it.
Yeah.
Michael, Gerard,
Pleasure.
thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Same to yourself.
Getting into more about your background and
Appreciate
obviously
that.
what you're doing. And if anybody wants to reach out to Michael, sure, just contact us through the podcast and we'll put them in touch. But thank you very much, mate, for joining us.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason.
Thanks.
Sorry.